Hello, Lakeview family. I hope you are all doing so well. It is a great week. Excited for all that's going on these days. So much going on. I'm filming this on Thursday, and let's see, we've got trunk or treat tonight. We're already prepping for that. We're also prepping for the Boldly United conference this weekend, and we are getting close to 160 people registered for that conference. Crazy. Pretty awesome what's going on and how that is how the Lord is using that us to host this conference, and we're in year 4, and it continues to grow every year, and it's serving as a real connection between a lot of churches. I have lost count, but I think we're over 10 different churches, including churches from Spokane, Washington. There's 2 from up there, and there's a church from Twin Falls. We've got churches that are outside of the Nazarene denomination, so bringing students, Christian students, together across denominational lines as a symbol of our unity and the bond of peace and our collective call to be and make disciples. So I'll be praying for all these things that we have going on. It's exciting. These are super, super exciting days, and excited for Sunday and continuing with our series in Revelation. And I'm excited to crack into chapter 12. And when we do that, we continue and really get a heavy dose of symbolism and things, images, characters that are symbolic or standing in for something else. And Revelation is full of symbolism. And I think that's one of the key things with coming to this text, all not just chapter 12, but all of Revelation, is recognizing the symbolism that it contains and the power of symbolism. And in chapter 12, we begin to see that the story kind of gets reappears and it repeats itself. We begin to see Revelation starting to cover things that are happening in chapter 12. We're looking at the story that has unfolded already that we've seen in the previous chapters from a heavenly perspective. Now we're seeing the same story unfolding from the perspective of earth, like from the earth perspective. And so that's something we have to remember. And I talked several weeks ago about part of all of the, you have the trumpets and the seals and the bowls of God's wrath, and you have this circular argument, right? This same kinds of things. The world is receiving and on the end of judgment, and it's being told from different ways and different perspectives, different symbolisms, and it is easy to get lost. And it's also, when we're trying to understand it, it's easy to take an approach of trying to figure out what everything means, and that begins to lead us down a place that moves away from the whole power and purpose of symbolism, which is standing in for something. So the moment we see a symbol and try to make it be something literal, we lose some of what the symbolism can be. So with symbols, oftentimes scholars will talk about them being less and more than what it is. And that seems maybe odd to us to think about. But the point of that is again, it's Revelation is unveiled. We begin to understand some of the truths of what's happening, who God is, who Jesus is, as the Lamb, what it means that he rules and reigns. And then there's mystery and a reveiling of sorts, where we begin to get lost in all of the symbolism of the stories. And for me, there's some excitement to that, because it just reminds us that we are people of faith, and that the story is one of hope that is telling you believe in the Lamb, like the Lamb who has come, who was slain. And over we see that. And we'll see that in chapter 12 with the story of a woman who gives birth. It's a crazy story, and the symbolism is there. So you have the woman who's giving birth, and we'll talk a lot on Sunday about the symbolism of who the woman is. Again, it's not a literal person. Some will try to have it be Mary or Eve, but we'll talk on Sunday that typically what is recognized is the people, God's people, and not the ethnic people of Israel. So not the people of Israel that are prophesied against from a nation perspective that we see in the Old Testament, because these are the faithful, which for us, as we're post-resurrection people, Revelation is a post-resurrection story. These are the people of God, are the faithful, are also those who follow the way of Jesus. So this is what we are looking at, that typically the woman is looked at to represent the faithful people of God. So again, it's a retelling, because we've looked at in previous conversations. And what Ben just talked about last week and the witnesses is that, right, is representing the people of God, the church. So here again, and that was from a heavenly perspective, a heavenly vision. So here now we have from an earthly perspective this picture of the church, and then we have the Christ child. And so what we have in the symbolism of the child, John gives us a little bit of clues as to who that is. And it is Jesus, as was prophesied, the one who will come and rule with an iron scepter. We know that then represents the person of Jesus, as a symbol of Jesus. And then we get into the dragon, and then we get into beasts. And this is when it gets, you can say, interesting and fun, scary, hard to understand, all of those things. But typically the dragon is seen as many things, as a symbol of Satan. So we see that and this kind of fall from heaven, and there's a whole a lot of things we could talk about in regards to that. And also how we see dragons and beasts representing the empire, representing both, you're looking at Rome and Babylon, which are referenced in Revelation, but also dragons and beasts represent empire. And using this language, especially symbolically in that day, like you couldn't talk critically about Rome or Caesar, right, or you would die. So that was not uncommon for imagery, symbolism like beasts and dragons to be used to talk about and refer to the rulers of the day, because you weren't allowed to and you would be killed. So we have all of these things that are happening. And we'll talk a little bit too about Greek mythology, because there's a Greek myth that some scholars would say it's very important to understand, that would have been understood by a first century audience, to really understand what's happening with the symbolism of the woman giving birth, and then also of the dragons and the beasts, to really grasp what is happening and what John is communicating to the church in this story. And so we also recognize that symbolism is, as I mentioned earlier, it's more than, right? So there's so much that is going on, and it's helping us to understand in just a little bit more clear vision of what's going on in this world that's beyond us, and the symbolism that exists in telling this story from John's perspective, from this vision of the dragons and the dragon and the two beasts. And we'll talk just a little bit on Sunday, and then Carol will pick up when we head further into chapter 13 and 14 and the 666 and some of these things of what it means. But we will see that what emerges with the dragon and the two beasts is what many scholars will talk about as the unholy trinity. So you have something that's mimicking from an evil perspective, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit, with the dragon, and then with the beast from the water, which also coming from the water, what that would have symbolized is political power, because the empire came typically from across the sea. So from out there came this political power to rule and reign over. So the symbolism of the beast from the water is kind of this political power. And then from the land, it was like would have been seen as and understood as localized power, local government, local religious leaders. And you have, all right, corrupt miracles, things that were happening. So there's a sense of it representing and symbolizing corrupt religious leaders. And when we see that from our perspective, and recognizing too that these symbols are more than, so it's not just Rome, it's not just Babylon, but it is also any empire that is in opposition to God. And what we know is that any earthly empire will always and only be able to go against God. That is the reality of this corrupt world in which we are a part of. There is no earthly empire. There is no empire or power of this world that is fully given over to God. That is not what we're seeing, because the kingdom is operating on another plane, is coming to restore. And so that is something that we must grasp. And so this idea of the water beast representing this corrupt political power, the land beast, corrupt local power, particularly religious power, that even was spoken of earlier in Revelation when John was speaking to the seven churches of the things that were happening within the church that were not of God. So calling us to be aware of the reality that these are the things that happen in our political systems, whether we live in the United States of America or in Europe or in Africa or South America, wherever we live. This is the reality that we must be watching for and know that it will be. Like this war is taking place. This battle between God and evil is taking place and will until Jesus returns. So be watching, be vigilant. And then the call isn't to save those things, right? The call isn't to go and try to save these corrupt political systems. It's to battle against those, and it's to remain faithful. And the continual call is to be a witness, to be faithful, and to worship. And these are the responses as the church that we're called to see and to embody. So I've gone too long already, but I'm excited again for another Sunday together. So we'll see you Sunday. God bless. And hopefully see some of you tonight. And be praying this weekend for the conference. If you want to come, there's people that will be praying. You're more than welcome. We would love to have you come and watch and see what our church is doing. Blessings.